Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I am running down my top 10 solo board games of 2022. These are my favorite games of the year, of the games that I've actually managed to get to the table. So there's a bunch from this year that I just haven't managed to either get my hand on or get to the table because of time. And some of them, there's some big ones. Oath Sworn, John's Company 2nd Edition, Burn Cycle, Wayfarers of the South Tigris. But even with those omissions, this was a great year with a ton of great games, and this top 10 list is really amazing. 2022 was also the first full year for the channel. We started in 2021, but we've been running all the way through this year, and that means that a lot of these games have gotten full playthroughs, so you'll definitely want to go check that out. Okay, I think that's enough talking. Let's dive right in. My number 10 is Woodcraft. This one could be much higher on the list, but I just got it played right before making this video. It's actually a relatively simple game. You're basically just building stuff out of wood, and there's 3 different types of wood represented by 3 different colors of dice. And you're doing a lot of contract fulfillment where they want very specific numbers on those dice. But you have a lot of ways of manipulating them. You can cut, because each dice sort of represents a bit of lumber. So if I have like a 6 green, I can use a saw to cut that into 2 dice. And maybe I'll make it a 5 and a 1, or a 4 and a 2. And then I can spend saw blades to further cut that down. Maybe I can cut the 4 into a 2 and a 2. You can also glue 2 dice together to create one bigger die. Or you can use spare wood to just increase the dice by like 1 or 2 pips. And it all revolves around this pretty nifty action selection wheel where there's 7 main actions. And every time you pick an action, you're going to move it to the next quadrant of this wheel. And depending on how those things move, you'll get these different bonuses. It's clever, and it's surprisingly thinky for how straightforward it all is. I've just been super impressed with this one so far. That's my number 10, Woodcraft. My number 9 is Carnival Zombie 2nd Edition. This one was a long time coming, but it was totally worth the wait. This is a stunning cooperative tower defense game, divided into sort of a day and night, where during the day you're just gearing up, getting cards that give you special abilities, setting up defenses and barricades, and then at night, it's a tower defense game where zombies are coming at you from all directions, and you're just blasting away at them trying to survive the night. The gimmick here is that the zombies are represented by little cubes, and anytime you kill them, you have to do a little dexterity game off to the side where you are drop them onto what's known as the pile of corpses. It's a little cardboard thing where when you drop them, if any spill off and fall onto the table, they then come back onto the board. And so as the night wears on and you kill more and more zombies, it gets a little bit more tense. They keep falling off and coming back. It's great thematically, and I find it to be a lot of fun. The whole spirit, I think, of this game is just really silly fun. The ending is also pretty clever, where you get to sort of pick how you want to escape Venice. You may take a boat or a plane or run across this bridge. There's all these different endings that involve different little mini games that you play. There's also a bunch of different scenarios that you can do, so there's a ton of replayability in the game. I had a blast. Go watch the full playthrough to learn more about it, but that's my number 9, Carnival Zombie 2nd Edition. Number 8 is Merchants of the Dark Road. This is another beautifully produced game with amazing bits, great art, and this game has a really satisfying little dice puzzle at the heart of it. You're using dice which will give you movement around this sort of circular track with these different, essentially, worker placement spots around it. But the number of die that you use is also determining the action that you can take. And you're collecting these goods which have different shapes that you're then sort of fitting onto your caravan, sort of Tetrising in there. You're also collecting people that want to go to certain places, and you're collecting these contracts. And then you're traveling out to deliver all this stuff to get points. I also like how you're essentially scoring two different types of victory points. And then at the end, you're gonna, your score is gonna be the lowest of those. So it forces you to diversify and, what you're doing. You can't just do one thing. I'm also a big fan of the solo mode and how that was handled. Very elegant and streamlined. Deck of cards, flip it. Very easy to manage. This is just a really solid and fun Euro game. So that's my number 8, Merchants of the Dark Road. Number 7 is Lands of Galzer. I think that's how you pronounce that. Now, this game came really late in the year, and it was actually on my most anticipated games for 2022. I just got it played, and so far, this open world, relatively simple storytelling game has really charmed me. You play as one of 4 anthropomorphic animal folk characters, and you have this board with a bunch of different locations, and you're just wandering around having adventures, finding quests, meeting different characters, having these encounters, these kind of choose your own adventure sort of things, and everything is resolved with this sort of dice check system where the dice you roll change depending on your skills. And then you also have up to 3 items that you can carry that will give you certain bonuses for different checks, depending on what you're doing. The storybook is all on an app, which works really well. It's really easy to, call up the different passage and you read it, you have a little adventure. It's all very sort of light and really simple, and you can just do whatever you want to do. It really has this sort of cute adventure kind of feel to it that, like I said, it's just charmed me. Now, I haven't played it enough to know whether or not this is going to continue to go up in my estimation, or if with more plays it will start to fall flat. I just don't know. There's just so much here that I need to play it more to see, if it holds up, if it has that replayability. But so far, I've really enjoyed my time in this really colorful universe. And that's my number 7, Lands of Galzer. My number 6 is Resist. This is a simple, quick-playing, solo-only card game. And I've done a full playthrough of it, so go check that out. You play as the leader of the Spanish Maquis. And so you have a deck of character cards, and you can just get it at random or you can draft it. And then you're going to play out 5 cards. And for each card, you're going to determine whether or not you're going to play them for their hidden special ability or their revealed special ability. If you reveal them, you usually have sort of more power, a better special ability, but then you lose them for the game. Whereas if you keep them hidden, a little weaker, but then they'll keep cycling through in your deck and you'll get to keep using them over and over again. And you're using them to try to complete these missions that require a certain strength, but then there's also these enemies at those missions that are face down, and you need to try to reveal them and then maybe take them out, or they're going to sort of mess with your plans. It's really straightforward, but it's thinky and really satisfying and difficult. I'm terrible at this game. It also has this cool thing where you can kind of decide when you want to end, because you're collecting points as you complete these missions. But if you're not careful, you'll actually lose the game. And so it might come a time where you feel like, well, I'm not sure I can win any more of these missions. So you can quit and just count up your points. And then you sort of compare that to a table to see how well you did. There's a pretty cool little push your luck thing there at the end that's fairly unique. I really like it. There's also a bunch of scenarios that you can play, and even a sort of a 3-game campaign. So there's lots of replayability here. I just had a blast with this one. Fantastic little card game. My number 6, Resist. Number 5 is Endless Winter. This is a fairly involved Euro game that uses worker placement with some deck building. In fact, there's a ton of different mechanisms here. There's sort of a kitchen sink approach with area control, a little tile laying, a little moving up tracks, a little set collection. You got a little bit of everything in these little mini games, but at the heart of it, you have these multi-use cards, and you're doing worker placement and then using those cards to take these actions. You're going to be drafting more cards into your deck. You're going to be building buildings out, trying to control certain regions to get bonuses. You're going to be hunting animals, and you're going to be moving up these tracks in order to get in-game points. There's a lot going on, but it all comes together, I feel like, with the worker placement. It sort of gels really nicely. And I also really like how the solo game was handled using these cards. You just flip a card and take an action. The solo ran smoothly. The whole game ran smoothly for how heavy it was. So there you go. That's my number 5, Endless Winter. Number 4 is Carnegie. I've also done a full solo playthrough of this one and Endless Winter as well. In fact, most of these games I've done a full solo playthrough of. So definitely go check those out to learn more. Carnegie is another heavier Euro game with a really smartly designed, streamlined solo mode. I really think this was the year of just like really smartly designed solo modes in Euro games that like weren't overly cumbersome or overly complex and heavy. Carnegie is definitely an example of that. Just flip a card, do some simple action. It's really straightforward. And the gameplay here is fascinating. You're picking an action, and then everyone gets to do that action. And there's kind of like 4 different actions to choose from, and you have like your workers in your building, and you're, creating different offices that let you do different actions. But then some actions are sending those workers out onto the board, which is helping you collect income. You're also putting out these projects onto the board, creating connections. There's this really interesting gameplay loop with those workers. And the fact that your solo opponent might take an action when you really aren't ready to take that action, so you kind of have a wasted turn. It's really fascinating stuff. And that's why it's my number 4, Carnegie. Number 3 is Weather Machine. I'm a huge Vital Lacerda fan, as many of you know. This was my number 1 most anticipated game of the year, and it did not disappoint. Apparently, from what I read, there are a lot of people who were disappointed with Weather Machine, but I was not one of them. I have had a blast playing this, particularly solo. Go check out my full solo playthrough, but for me, I love the way the solo is handled in this game, playing against the 2 saboteurs. I think it's a really smartly designed solo mode, and the gameplay here is just really fantastic, very thinky. I love the voucher system here, where when you take one of the actions, you have to pay certain vouchers, and then you also receive other ones. And if you place your worker to the right of other workers, you'll get more vouchers. Whereas if you go to the leftmost spot in a particular action space, you'll get to take extra actions, but you'll get fewer vouchers. So you're managing those vouchers, you're trying to collect these research tokens so that you can publish papers and have breakthroughs to score points. There's this really intricate process for what you're trying to do. You're trying to get a lot of ducks in a row. And I always find that sort of thing fun. I love when you have to have these long-term plans that you're constantly working on, and just makes it very satisfying when you finally achieve it. And I just really love the theme here, even though it doesn't come through as much as maybe some of other games by Vital Lacerda. I still love the theme. I love the art. The production is amazing. So this is just another gem and a highlight of the year for me for sure. It's my number 3, Weather Machine. My number 2 is Ark Nova. Now, a lot of people consider this to be a 2021 release because I think it was released in Germany late in 2021. But I believe the English edition was in 2022. I couldn't get it until this year. And if you've seen my top 50 of all time, you know this thing has rocketed up the list to be one of my favorite games of all time. I really like a simple solo mode, like the simpler the better, and you can't get much simpler than the solo mode here in Ark Nova. In fact, it was way too simple for a lot of people I know. They've even created their own solo modes. But I love that the solo mode here gets completely out of the way and just lets you play the game lightning fast. In fact, for the weight of this game, the fact that you can play it solo in like half an hour to 45 minutes is insane. I'm not saying I want every solo mode to be this way, but here it just works for me. I love what you're doing in the game. I love this tableau building with these animals. You have this huge stack of cards. So you're just drawing cards off the top of the deck, or, maybe you're drafting from, a line of cards that's out there. You mostly have animal cards where you need to get pins, and you're doing a little tile laying on your map. And the whole thing uses this sort of action system that is taken right out of Civilization New Dawn, where you have your 5 different action cards underneath the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the strength of the action is based on how far, what number it's under. So ideally, you want to take actions when they're furthest to the right, so you can get that most powerful action. But then once you take it, it goes all the way down to the 1 slot and becomes very weak. So you're going to want to take some other actions to make it stronger and stronger. And then you can also upgrade those actions to make them more powerful. It's just a really fun game, and I just think the solo mode just works so well for me. That's my number 2, Ark Nova. And my number 1 solo board game from 2022 is a bit of a surprise. It's Frostpunk, the board game. This snuck on the list at the 11th hour. It just arrived recently. I was so excited for it. I got it right onto the table, and I've just been playing it over and over and over again. I can't stop playing it. Frostpunk has aspects of This War of Mine. It has aspects of Robinson Crusoe. But we're now taking a step back, and we're controlling an entire village. We're city building, worrying about food and sickness and morale. We're exploring, we're gathering materials, and then we're building necessary buildings, which are going to let us take critical actions. And like those other 2 games, there's tons of story here. Now, the story is handled more kind of like Robinson Crusoe than This War of Mine, but we're still faced with a lot of these heart-wrenching moral decisions, and the choices that we make will have long-term consequences. Oh, it's fantastic. It's bleak. It's difficult. The theme is incredible. We're living in this frozen-over, post-apocalyptic 19th century world, and the only reason we're able to survive is due to advances in steam technology, which has created these giant generators, which are providing the heat that is the only reason that civilization can even survive. And so you have this massive generator, this awesome mini at the middle of the table. It's a cube tower, but you're putting coal into it, and you're heating up the various rings of the map. Because if you take an action in a spot that isn't heated up, then that's a cold action, and that worker will get sick. And if you get too much sickness, then there's death, and it just snowballs from there. So you're trying to constantly get enough coal to heat the place up so that people won't get sick, so you can take these actions. You also have to make sure that the generator doesn't break down. There's just so much cool stuff here. But for the year 2022, Frostpunk is the game of the year for me. And in fact, if I had played this before I made my top 50 games of all time, it would have been on there for sure. But there you go. My number 1 of the year, Frostpunk the board game. So there you go. That was my top 10 of 2022. I think this year was a fantastic year of gaming. I do not understand some of these people that are putting down this year. There's been so many great games. So many games that are keepers in my collection. And so many more games to get to, so many that I haven't played from this year that I can't wait to get to the table. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.